Sorry about that. Thank you for joining us. Now let's get the show started. There are many challenges facing Nigeria, including economic distress, insecurity, corruption, poverty, and the list goes on and on. But one of our biggest problems is leadership and its lack of accountability. Just what we were talking about as we were opening the program this morning. Tell us what is going on and make sure that you, as a leader, are accountable. Leaders are often not held accountable for their actions, which leads to corruption and impunity. Some African countries, even our next door neighbors, have witnessed a military takeover. Some others, like Rwanda, are shaking up the military hierarchy. Rwanda and Cameroon are doing such. But many will argue that democracy is still the best form of government, even with its attendant problems. And the problems are many. Labour has just declared a warning strike action starting from Tuesday. The question is, when can we or when will we ever get it right? And more importantly, how can we get the right leadership which will lead the country to where we desire it to be? That's what our talking point will be this morning, and it's my pleasure to welcome Professor Ademola Abbas, Professor of International Law and Global Security. Good morning. Okay, joining us from our studio in Abuja, I'd like to welcome a legal practitioner, Mr. Obioma Eze-Nwobodo. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, thank you.
Yes, so joining us later in the program, of course, we have Salihu Tanko Yakasai, 2003 PRP governorship candidate. He will also be joining us virtually, as well as Professor Abbas. But in the meantime, we have Mr. Eze-Nwobodo. So let us open the discussion with you, sir. Coups are happening, especially in Francophone Africa. We haven't had any in Anglophone Africa yet. And some are saying that it is getting closer to Nigeria. And the main thing that people are talking about that is causing these coups is the quality of the leadership in these countries. Let's bring all that talk to our own country, Nigeria. As far as leadership is concerned, how do you think we're doing? How is our democracy doing?
Mr. Eze-Nwobodo, that's for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. To me, as a citizen, I would say yes, we are doing right. And I will also say that we are not getting it also right. Yes, we are in democracy. We have maintained the 4-year tenure, as you people earlier said. We have been having democratically elected leaders. But if we can be fair to ourselves, the dividend of democracy is not being allowed to get down to the common man, to the masses. As we are talking, we are in the subsidy removal era, where subsidy was suddenly removed from petroleum. And these palliatives that the citizens have been waiting for hasn't happened. In fact, what is happening now is a mockery, despite the 5 billion loan grant that was given to state governments. You mentioned about state government ordering bags of rice and what have you. For goodness sake, that's not leadership. Subsidy is meant to help the people to come out of poverty, to make their standard of living to be higher. We are the poverty capital of the world. If you are talking about a palliative, the palliative that you get from the removal of subsidy should reflect on people's life. Let me dovetail to Abuja here, where I reside, and where by the grace of God, I'm the chairman of MBA Gariki, branch of MBA. Have we had anything like palliative? We haven't. In fact, the minister of FCT that just came in and started threatening the citizens, the residents, without asking or feeling the pulse of the people or understanding what needs to be done in FCT. If you come into leadership, first of all, you should take time to study, understudy your environment before going public to issue any policy statement. I have been in Abuja, and I'm a stakeholder here, and I'm telling you that the resident, that issue of demolition or whatever, is not their problem. We have some important issues to be addressed. If you are talking about subsidy and you want to bring on palliatives, you should be talking about providing effective means of transportation, which is lacking in this city. And that is why you see people coming into the town to find a way to reside.
Mr. Owobodo, don't you think, just 1 second, it's a question of leadership, not just for one section, but for the entirety of the nation. And I'm glad that you're raising some of these issues already. But perhaps to also raise whether or not you think there are difficult decisions that should have been taken that weren't being taken, or that there were some systems that have been compromised that need to be reset. Someone said that, we're taking difficult decisions now that we should have taken 20 years ago. So the question then is, does it have to take us up to 20 years to take the difficult decisions and make the difficult moves that we need to make lives better for people 20 years, 30 years after?
Yes, difficult decision, it depends on your own definition of what you mean by difficult decisions. Because when you are talking about difficult decisions, to me, like what we are talking about, is the government doing what it's supposed to do. If you are talking about petroleum and what have you, and good leadership, why are we not refining? It is the decision, it is the action of the government that makes us not to be refining, not you, not me. The difficult task is for them to do what is right.
It also makes me ask the question.
To where I reside.
Yeah, we'll come back there. But it also makes me wonder, Mr. Owobodo. So Nigeria is not refining now. And yes, it is only natural to put it at the doorstep of Nigeria, of the federal government. But the people who are supposed to be working at the refineries are not imported into the country. They are also Nigerians. So how come we got this bad in the area of refining or not refining petroleum products and no one has said anything? But let me ask Professor Ademola Abbas the same question that Alero asked, at the beginning. Do you think we are taking the right steps, difficult or not, in making our nation better to avert any kind of crisis in the near or far future?
In the name of a coup.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's a very important question, and I think we have addressed this once or twice in the past. Look, there is no better way of saying this, and we cannot deodorize it. I'm happy you did mention the fact that what the current government is doing is something we should have been doing probably in the last 500 years, to be honest with you. No country in the world can be using 90% of its GDP to service debt and then hope to survive for a long, long time. I think what is going on is we have got used to certain comforts in Nigeria, which the current administration is trying probably to say, look, we've been enjoying this for a long time, yes. Our fuel has been subsidized for a long time. This has taken place for a long time. Now let's start rolling back. Because if you don't roll back, the consequences are going to be much, much dire, not only for us, on our children and our children's children. But you have to understand.
I'm sorry. You said we got used to comfort. Who doesn't want to get used to comfort? Who doesn't want to get used to comfort?
Hey, we got used to comfort, but that comfort is a comfort we have bought in a very cheap way. It's a comfort we have bought by getting ourselves into a lot of debt. That's what I'm saying about. We keep on taking loans and loans and loans and loans, and then we are using 90% of our income, of our GDP, to service debts to other countries that we have procured debt from. Now, that is the problem, and we got used to that particular system. And that is why every successive government that tried to remove subsidy was forced to a standstill, the last being President Jonathan. Now, no country can survive that for much longer. When you look at the policies the current government is putting in place, and I'll come back to the fact that the impact of that in Nigeria, and obviously in the short term, they are policies that in the long term are going to benefit Nigerians. This country is going to emerge. I am confident about it. It's going to emerge from all these policies much greater. Of course, there are certain conditionalities that must be in place, and that is very important, because one of the tragedies of African democratic system is the lack of continuity. As an example, you have a government coming and saying, look, this subsidy is high time we let it go. It's high time we did away with it and stuff like that. Another one comes and rolls back and says, you know what, I don't believe in that. So the gains of 4 years will be wasted, or the gains of 8 years will be wasted. So one of the conditionalities is that whatever you are doing now, we can see the beauty of what is going on. We can see the long-term consequences of this on Nigerian economy, on Nigerians themselves. Let's make sure that we build institutions that will solidify the gains and make sure that whatever happens in the future, we don't go back to where we were coming from. That's what I'm talking about. So we got used to this, and whether you like it or not, one of the most cruel things to deal with in this world is to change the people's culture. Nigerians, we got used to buying fuel, and quite rightly so. We got used to buying our petrol at very cheap price compared to other countries in the world. And you can't blame us. We have oil for free, and it was mismanaged, no doubt. Money was stolen, money was looted, a lot of corruption, lack of transparency. So Nigerians are saying, look, the only thing we benefit from our oil is to have a subsidized oil. So if you're going to take it from us, I remember in one of the sessions I had with you in the studio there, I think just the same day, President Ashiwaju made a statement on June 12th. And one of the questions you asked was that where he was asking Nigerians again to sacrifice. And I said yes. But the president was asking Nigerians then to sacrifice. But in asking Nigerians to sacrifice more, he put certain conditions on the table. He said, look, I am asking you to sacrifice, and because of that, my government will do ABC. That is a contract. President Ashiwaju has entered into a contract with Nigerian people that sacrifice more. I understand your sacrifices, but these sacrifices we are going to make for our government to be able to work, for us to go on the right path. This and this and this are the benefits. And this and this and this are what the government will do on its own part. So make sure that the sacrifices you are making on the one hand are not wasted on the part of, for instance, bloated governance on the other hand. So if you're asking Nigerians to make certain sacrifices, as an example, tighten your security system, tighten your budget and this and that, the government cannot be asking Nigerians to do that on the one hand. And on the other hand, the government is having a bloated system. That is when people are going to say, hello, it doesn't make any sense at all. So the long and short is that, yes, what we are doing now is the right thing to do. It's what we should have been doing 500 years ago. But the most important thing is not just doing it, it's making sure that the government puts structures and institutions in place to make sure that whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens after 4 8 years, will not be wasted when another government comes in. I think for me that is the most critical point.
Okay, but Prof, you say that we're going in the right direction, but people are going to be asking for more accountability. This issue of subsidy, for instance, we're told that we saved 400 billion in the first month or so, something like that kind of figure. But we haven't been told where it has gone. What has it been used for? Shouldn't there be a plan? Okay, this is how much we have been spending on subsidy, so we're going to save XYZ amount every month, and this is how we're going to deploy the funds that we intend to save. Prof?
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, that is one of the conditionalities I referred to in my earlier statement that it's not enough to say we're on the right path. The government must make sure that it puts conditionalities on ground. And as I said, one of them, I talk about the lean government. Another one is, of course, I've mentioned transparency. You cannot be asking people to make sacrifices and not show them that you've been transparent in managing the outcomes or the dividends of their sacrifices. However, having said that, the process of government is different from the process that we adopt in our individual homes and corners. A government is a different entity, maybe because I've been involved in it. If people expect a government to come on day-to-day level, every single day, okay, Monday we save 200 naira, so I come and announce it on Tuesday, Wednesday we save 400 naira, it doesn't even work like that. There is transparency, but people also, we have to be patient. I understand the Nigerians have become impatient, and quite rightly so, because we have trusted our governments too far for too long. So you can't really blame Nigerians for being a little impatient with their governments nowadays, because it's a question of you take your eyes off the ball, then a lot of nonsenses begin to happen. We don't want to tolerate that. We don't want to accept that in Nigeria anymore. I accept that. However, we must also understand that a government has a business to run. And I must say, it's a credit to President Tinubu so far, his government, that at least they feed us information constantly. I think the presidents have spoken about 4-5 times in the last 100 days, which is commendable, whether we like it or not. But then the government has a business to run. Whatever they save, whatever have been consequences or dividends of all the savings that they've made in the short term, they should find time to come and explain to Nigerians how much they have saved, and more importantly, what are those savings going to be channeled to? Nigerians want to know. But what I'm saying is that in our desire to know, we must also understand that a government cannot be turned into something like a parrot, that every single second you have to come on television and come and say this and that. Because at the end of the day, don't forget, whatever you say also will have consequences. So you must make sure that what you are saying is not, you are not saying today, oh, we've saved 700 billion naira. Meanwhile, the very next day, you spend 300 billion of that particular money to service part of our another distance, and then come back again, and you open yourself to a lot of inconsistencies. So the message is, yes, government needs to be more transparent. It's high time.
Session here, Prof. My apologies. Is maybe people need to get that parity kind of impression for now from a government that communicates, because we haven't had that kind of situation for a long time. But let me come back to you, Mr. Ezenwobodo. And you've also listened to Prof and everything. Perception, many people say, is reality. Whatever people perceive is their reality, irrespective of whatever good intentions there are. Now, generally, when we talk about Nigeria, talk about development, talk about all these things, we're talking about the federal government. But then we have states. We have every single one of them responsible and supposedly accountable to their people. So, and this is where dissatisfaction, discomfort, and all those things actually do happen. The policies of the federal government, no doubt, has impact on the citizens directly. But the indigents in each state also need to feel, the impact of their government at various levels. How well would you say we are doing at that subnational level in terms of ensuring that people get the right kind of governance that will make them feel like they are being led right?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we are hitting the nail on the head. You can't talk about responsive governance without talking about grassroots governance. And in Nigeria, in most states of the Federation, we don't have local government system, democratically elected local government system in place. Many state governments have usurped the powers of the local government chairman. Many state governments have refused to conduct a local government election. And we can't be talking about getting it right, having the kind of leadership we want, without looking at this issue, because it's not just about the president, it's not just about the federal government. A lot happen at the state level, a lot happen at the local government level. And if we get it correctly at the state, if the state can allow the local government to work, and if the local government work because they have that direct relationship with the people, because the local man in one community or one hamlet doesn't know about the federal government. The government he knows is the one he sees and feels, and that's the local government. So it's so saddening that in many states of the Federation, we don't have the local government system in operation.
But let me ask you something on that one, Mr. Zewobodu. My apologies, my sincere apologies. Just a second. On that, I've asked this question in 2 conversations yesterday, including from a governor, which is, do we have a constitutionally guaranteed, and I know Prof. may also want to weigh in on that, do we have a constitutionally guaranteed 3rd tier of government, i.e. a local government system, constitutionally guaranteed? Do we have a local government system constitutionally guaranteed as a 3rd tier of government, as opposed to being just an administrative office for the state government?
Yeah, that's a legal question, and this legal question it has been answered even by the Supreme Court, guaranteeing the terms of offices of local government chairmen. We have the local government in the Constitution, created by the Constitution. You can't just wake up and create a local government. It's a constitutional issue. We have their functions allocated to them, and the Constitution has said that nobody shall take over any system of government by force. So when a state governor takes over the functions of the local government, it is taking it by force. We have 3 tiers of government, and we have the federal government, we have the state, and we have the local government. So anybody that is telling you that we don't have the local government system in place, or that it is an appendage of the state, is just trying to be clever by half. Whether we like it or not, I think the next focus should be on the local government system, it's being effective. Because let me tell you, if we have an effective system of local government, I'm telling you that many of the issues we are having, even insecurity, will be reduced, because it boils from the locality. Some of these things are organic, and it is the local government system at that level that we detect it first and find a way to nip it at the bud. But because we don't have it, before you know what is happening, the whole thing has engulfed the state, and they will be calling the federal government to look into it or to come and address it. The local government system is a constitutional issue, and it has been guaranteed both by the Constitution, and the Supreme Court has enforced it, has pronounced on it, has guaranteed their tenure, and it's saddening that the state governors are still seeing it as an appendage of their offices. So, and also when we talk about the local government, we should also...
Mr. Zewobodu, please, if you say it the way you have just said it, how come nobody has taken it upon themselves to take the state government to court?
But many of the issues have gone to court. Many of the issues have gone to court. You can remember in the last administration, many of the issues have gone to court, even up to the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court, they have been so affirmative in confirming the constitutionality of the local government system we have in Nigeria, and their rights or powers to guide their funds and to appropriate their funds. You can remember in the last administration of Muhammad Buhari, the AGF of the Federation, the AGF of the Federation then at a point wanted to stop a kind of a dispensing local government fund to state government that do not have a constitutionally elected local government system. Some persons challenged it, but his action then on the pronouncement of the court. And I believe him. If a state governor has refused to conduct a local government election, he has no right to appropriate the funding meant for that local government, because it's supposed to be appropriated by an elected local government chairman, not by an appointed chairman appointed by the governor who belongs to his political party or a friend of the governor. So when we are talking about, we should know that governance is local, as they always say. Okay. It is local. When you address the local issue, and that local issue can only be addressed by the local government chairman, then you have some of these issues would have been solved.
Okay, well, Mr. Zewobodu, just a quick one, because we have another guest joining us shortly, but let me quickly ask Prof this same question, and if you can take it in 30 seconds or 60 before we go back to our third guest, which is, do we have a constitutionally guaranteed third tier of government in the local government system? If we do, as you agree with Mr. Zewobodu, how come it seems like state governments just willy-nilly roughshod on the local government systems without much adherence to what you may believe is both the pronouncement of the Constitution and the pronouncement of the Supreme Court. Professor Abbas, that's for you.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo. I think the gentleman also answered that question. Look, if you look at the Nigerian Constitution, precisely Chapter 1, Part 2, look at Section 7 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999, as revised. It lays out clearly the existence of local government administration, the third tier, so-called third tier administration in the Nigerian political space. And it says, I think in Section 7, that the state shall take necessary actions to make sure that the local government is there. It's written in the Constitution, loud and clear, Chapter 1, Part 2, Section 7. The only limiting factor is on Section 8 of the Nigerian Constitution concerning the creation of new state, and so on and so forth. So there is no question about the legal footing of the existence of local government as a tier of political administration in Nigeria. So that answers the first part of your question. The second part is then why, as local government administration existed in the way it has existed. Look, Ayo, that question is interesting because you could also ask why has the state government administration existed vis-a-vis the federal government the way it has existed. We are in a country in which the federal government, that is the central government, sees other tiers of government as slaves and not equal partners. There's something fundamentally wrong with the way we administer. We copy federalism or presidential system of government from America without copying and without learning how they were able to birth it. That is the problem we are facing in the country. States in Nigeria see themselves as slaves or appendages of the federal government. You have states that go to the federal government every single month, cap in hand, to go and beg for subvention. Subvention from the money, from the resources you generate from your own state, and you give the federal government. I don't know whether you understand it. I am the landlord in my house. I work, I make money. I give that money to my housemaid or house help, and then go back to that house help every month to come and give me money to be able to run the budget of the house. It simply doesn't work. What it does is that it will thwart the arrangement. The central government has no business administering the finances made by the state in Nigeria. I'm beginning from that before I go to the government. State in the days of regions generated their own fund, and decide to allocate part of it to the central government. That is how it should be in the federal system. Yeah. Go to US. It's not that the federal system, federal government doesn't generate its own money at the end of the day. So it doesn't sit over state government and tell them, boys, bring the money to me. They bring money every single, all the states in the 36 states in Nigerian Federal Capital Territory, bring money to the federal government, which then sits on top of them and then say, okay, every month we take this billion, we take that billion. When that happens, you weaken your state government administration and you make them appendages. And that is why you don't have state government versus federal government in Nigeria. We just saw when former chairman of president of the governor of CBN made all these, incredibly unfriendly policies just before the elections. We had 3 states, including I think Kogi and Kaduna and other states, taking the federal government of Nigeria Buhari to court that you couldn't do this in this system. That was an aberration. It doesn't normally happen every day like that. But that was also very gladdening that you have some states that have become bold and said, you know what, we can't operate like this. So the same thing with blue. I don't need to mention it. I'm sure you will have seen a video that went viral 3 days ago, in which some local government chairmen in this country, in a state in this country, to be precise, in Ogun State, where I'm speaking from, went and prostrated to the governor of the state. These are local government chairmen prostrating to the governor of a state. So what do you expect? Don't get me wrong. I am not saying if local government chairmen have done something wrong, they should not, constitutionally, that is what they should not. I'm not saying they should not constitutionally appease the state or amend fences with the state. But that is different from when you go like schoolboys and prostrating to the principal and saying, oh, this and that. And I mean, I saw that. I was mortified. I was horrified. I was horrified because I'm not horrified because they just proceed to the governor, but because they are reducing their constitutional importance to absolute nothing.
Yeah.
You can't proceed to the governor today and then tomorrow and then say, I want to take the same government to court. It doesn't even work like that.
Yeah.
So constitutionally, local government administration exists in Nigeria, but politically, they've rendered themselves completely I'm sorry to say, useless because of political patronage and this and that. But in the same way, states have done that vis-a-vis the federal government in Nigeria.
Okay. Joining us now is Salihu Tanko Yakasai, who was the PRP governorship candidate in the recently concluded elections. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I am happy that you're joining us at this time, because the question I'm going to ask you now, I assume that you are going to give an answer arising from your experience, because it's about the process through which leaders emerge in Nigeria, our electioneering process. What are your thoughts? I mean, our speakers have said, yes, we're going in the right direction, which means that maybe we are now beginning to select the kind of leaders who will take us to the utopia. But is the system through which these leaders emerge, is that system one that is acceptable? Is it free? Is it fair?
Well, thank you so much for that question. And I think that is exactly as you just were speaking. This were exactly the issues that were running through my head, because you have to go back to how these leaders, and the number one process is the number one platform or institution is the political parties. These are the vehicles, with which these leaders stand for election and win election and then assume office. So that's the first institution. Apart from the political parties, I'll come back to the political parties. But apart from the political parties, we also have the other institutions that produce leaders. Even before you grow up, before you want to lead any position in the society, you have the home. The family unit is an institution that have broken homes in our societies now, and so on and so forth. I'll elaborate on that later on. You also have to look at the institutions, like, for instance, the school system, that produce leaders. All these three examples that I've given, need total revamping. For instance, if I should go back to the political process, we have political parties that of conducting primaries in terms of not even knowing the number of members that they have, because I don't think there's any political party that is fully digitalized in terms of the membership of their members. There is just a record in the level. It's not something that is being handled very well. You also have the political parties that are not abiding by the Electoral Act. Electoral guidelines, that entails that you have to, do your primaries according to some certain rules and guidelines. But we have seen them flaunting these guidelines and so on and so forth. And I believe that if we want to strengthen the process, we have to go back to this at least three or other processes that produce leaders in Nigeria, so that we can have quality leaders. There are some qualities that you are expected to have in a leader. You have to have competence. You have to have ability to communicate effectively. You have to have character.
Mr. Tanko Yakasai, if you can hear me, perhaps the challenge with that really is the people that we are talking to about leadership. Most of the people who vote are not as educated. They're not so educated. I mean, look at the political rallies and all. How many of them really are going to ask the question, what are the qualities of this particular leader that wants to be a councillor or a chairman of a local government or a member of the House of Assembly and all of those things? So it goes back to the question that Alera asked, just now about the selection process. So what needs to happen if the people who vote, a good number of the people who vote are not so educated about why they are selecting who, but a little number here and there, and then they're good to go.
I do agree in that the vast majority of the electorates are not whether maybe educated or enlightened enough to know the choices that they are making, especially with the economic situation. If you are economically deprived, to a certain limit, you've lost your freedom, to choose what you want and who you want. I do agree that, but it's a question of is bottom-up approach or top-to-bottom approach. And I think for me, it's both ways. While we are asking the leaders to do what is right, we should also be asking the citizens, or to also live up to their expectation. We have a number of people, that are enlightened, educated in the society, civil society groups, journalists, and so on and so forth. These are people that can continue to enlighten the people to know that the type of leaders that you elect have direct consequences on your future, more or less. You understand? So it will take time, but what I always advocate is for us to start with ourselves. You understand? How many of us have our documents intact, maybe car registration documents intact? How many of us, stamp our feet and say we are not going to give bribe for anybody that demands bribe? These are the kind of things that we should be inculcating in ourselves, so that at least it starts with you. Like they always say, change begins with you. So this is one of the things that I always advocate. But we have to continue the enlightenment so that the general public, the masses, those that have the number in terms of voting, to do that. And the significant percentage of Nigerian population now, almost about 70%, are young people. And these young people now, you have quite a number of them that are educated and aware and enlightened. How many of them have smartphones that are always being updated on the happenings in the world? These are people that we should be targeting in terms of awareness creating. These are the bulk of the voters as we have them today. So there should be a coordinated effort in enlightening the general public of the consequences. You have collected 200 naira, 100 naira, 500 naira to vote for a candidate that is not qualified. If the consequences come and the negative effect of that action, starts to build, this is the time that we should be telling people, okay, you see now that you are suffering from so and so, it's as a result of that 500 naira that you collected and vote for someone. I contested election. I've gone to the 44 local governments of Kano twice in my campaign election in the last election, 2023 election. So we know all these things. We have seen it, and we know that it's a long way to go. But I think it's a collective effort. It's a collective effort. There has to be a deliberate effort by Nigerians collectively to say that we want better leadership.
Okay.
Understand? Or else it will continue to deteriorate.
Okay.
I'm saddened that the quality of leadership in Nigeria keeps falling. And nobody is doing anything about it.
Oh dear. Well, we must start winding down now. And what we're looking at actually is the leadership that Nigeria needs. So let us try and paint a picture of what Nigeria should be looking for in its leadership now. Because there are leaders for certain periods in the lives of nations. So what is the kind of leadership? I will begin with you, Mr. Ezenwobodo. What kind of leadership do you think Nigeria requires at this point in time in the history of its life?
Thank you. To me, let me start from the executive. What Nigerians need from the executive is an executive that is responsible and responsive, an executive that understands the feelings of the people, an executive that works for the people. And as Prof has said, an executive that should sacrifice first. I mean, there's no reason why we should have a bloated government. There's no reason why we should have more ministers. We need an executive that should cut down the cost of governance. Also, on the judiciary, we need a judiciary that should be strong, a judiciary that should be well enlightened, a judiciary that should be able to give a fair and firm decisions that agree with the people. That's why I agree with that maxim that all eyes should be on the judiciary. And all eyes also should be on the legislature. We need a legislature that can pass the right laws, a legislature that will do its oversight function and make sure that policies of government are implemented appropriately. A legislature that thinks about the people, not about themselves, not about the cars they will buy, not about their accommodation, but for the interest and the goods of the people of Nigeria.
Okay, we don't have time. I'd be asking you, how can the electorate identify all these in the leadership? But we don't have time for you to answer all that. Professor Abbas, the kind of leadership that Nigeria needs at this point in time.
Well, thank you. I don't think there is any point in rehashing, what the gentleman just said. I think he captured most of them, to be honest with you. What we lack in Nigeria today, basically, whether you are executive, legislative, judiciary, put them collectively, is that kind of people-oriented leadership.
Okay, Professor. Professor,
beg your pardon? Yes.
Since you agree with him in toto, how would you then advise the electorate to identify these persons that you have painted the picture of?
That was the angle I was coming in. That beyond that, you need a people-oriented leadership.
Oh dear.
At work.
Okay, let us go to Mr. Salihu Tanko Yakasai. The leadership Nigeria requires today, and if you agree with Prof. and Mr. Ezenwobodo, how do we identify these persons?
Oh dear, seems...
That's what...
Mr. Tanko Yakasai.
Okay, I think the network has dealt a heavy blow, but I mean, it's a good place to anchor the segment. Well, it's a conversation that is definitely ongoing, isn't it?
Definitely. We haven't covered all grounds at all.
Barely scratched the surface.
Because we need to know how we identify these people so that we can vote for them.
Exactly.
And vote for the right people. But we have to leave it here today. I'd like to thank Mr. Obioma Ezenwobodo, a legal practitioner who joined us from our studio in Abuja. Mr. Salihu Tanko Yakasai, 2023 PRP governorship candidate, who joined us latterly via Zoom, as well as Professor Ademola Abbas, Professor of International Law and Global Security. We do apologize for the, technology has all kinds of ideas of its own. We couldn't help it. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. And for those at home, thank you for staying with us. We'll be right back with another interesting conversation in just a moment.